It's time for the E-commerce Business Growth Podcast, the show where we talk about strategies that help you grow your online store. I'm your host, Jeff Welsh, and this week my web developer Mike Hudgins is back, and we're talking about optimizing your e-commerce store for mobile devices. We give you our top 6 techniques that will ensure a better experience for your users. So stay right where you are, grab your coffee, and enjoy the show. All right. Good morning, Mike. How's it going?
You know, it's going great. It's a little rainy here today in Morgantown, West Virginia, where we're based. But you know, it's good. It's Friday, right?
It's Friday, absolutely.
That's right.
Friday, but another opportunity to record some awesome content here for the podcast.
That's right. I'm excited. We talked about the topic ahead of time, and I'm excited to just dive right into it, to be honest.
I can tell your enthusiasm's super high. You're ready to roll.
I know. It's just always drinking my coffee beforehand, or I actually can't have coffee, but drinking my tea, and I'm ready to go. Let's go.
Sweet. So I thought a good opportunity for today's episode would be for us to talk about optimizing for mobility on the web.
Ooh, mobility.
Right.
Yeah, for mobile.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean we were just talking about this a little bit before the episode about how at one point in time there was not too long ago, a few years ago, when not all websites were optimized for mobile. You remember that?
Yeah, I mean, that was the catalyst for a lot of the sales early on. So when I started the company in 2014, it was actually fairly common that, especially local websites, because we were local back then. Like, we did a lot more local work. Now we're like way more national. But anyways, back then, like a lot of the businesses would be like, I want my website to work on a phone. Everybody's using their smartphones now. And, my website was built in like 2005 and doesn't support the phone. So I'd be like, heck yeah. So I pretty much learned with a mobile first mindset, even though I didn't get my first smartphone until I started here because I needed it for mobile dev. Yeah. So it was a bit of a learning curve for me. I grew up and I had one of those like flip up phones.
I know, it was really difficult
with the keyboard.
It was really
those
tough
were awesome, though.
to really review client work on your flip phone.
Yeah, for sure. I did immediately get a phone because I needed one to perform my job. So yeah.
And it's really rare nowadays that we actually see a website that just is not optimized for mobile, because that just has become the new standard. So I think
at least works on mobile. I don't know about optimized. But
True, correct. There's a big difference, but
right.
But yeah. So I thought today a good way to approach today's topic would be for us to go over our top 6 optimization techniques or things you should focus on for your e-commerce store on mobile. What do you think?
Sounds good. I know we were trying to limit it to 5, but just had to add that.
Yeah, there was that extra bonus one we had to throw in there. All right, so let's dive right into it. So the first one, let's talk a little bit about responsive, eye-catching web design.
Okay.
What would be some of the things that you think are valuable for people to make sure that they actually focus on for their online store or their website in that regards, in that category?
So I think this to stand out, making, when you have quote unquote responsive eye-catching web design, it really means that you're standing out for everybody else that has a mobile optimized website. Well, how can you do that? Well, I mean, I'm very focused on e-com. So last week I talked about, the ability to have a sticky add to cart at the bottom of the page, right? Mm-hmm. But more so, like what I'm thinking today is the design on mobile is almost separate from desktop. It's like a completely new emphasis. And when I say eye catching, like specifically, I'll give the user even a specific tip on this. Is like I like to make a site that looks like a mobile application actually. So one of the things you've seen us do is I code in mobile menus that don't just have that hamburger on the top left. I've done like ones where I actually emulate like Facebook's design at the bottom. You know how you click on the Facebook app,
Right.
and you have those tabs with the symbols. I've done that before too, especially if you can get away with like a 5-page nav and then all of the sub pages are within that nav. This is just an example. Not everybody's website's going to work for this, but like that's just like another thing like that I did just to make that site stand out and make our portfolio even stronger, was just looking at apps. Like, how do apps do it? Because apps have much more retention on phones than websites do in general. So I like to try to see like what can I learn from applications.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. Why do you think that is? Why do you think there's more retention on the app side of things?
Well, I think that the friction to use one is a lot lower, because like say you have like your logo, like your Facebook or your Reddit or your Instagram or your TikTok, like on your phone, you click it and you essentially access that content immediately. But if you want to access a website like yourstore.com, you have to type it in on the browser. And like I'm always preaching in the CRO lessons and stuff, it's always about that friction. So if I can create an experience that is contained within an app, I am going to, by definition, have less friction to visit my website. And there are like Shopify applications that can convert your website into an app. That's not specifically what I'm talking about on this point, but that is like I do draw inspiration from those experiences.
It just like having the UI kind of reflect the use of an app as opposed to just a scrolling website.
Sure, exactly. And the hamburger menu still works well. It was just an example of like how a website can stand out from the norm.
For those that may not be aware, when you say the hamburger menu, you're talking about that little stacked line. I think it's like 3 lines stacked in the upper left. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people will code it so that the lines turn into an X. When you have it pulled up, so it like might animate and morph. So you click the three lines, and then your menu pops up, and then there's an X button on the top left where the hamburger icon used to be.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I think that's really a good, unique approach. I don't think we've ever really talked about that. I know that you just generally do a lot of those things, but I never really thought about how you actually do the work to make it emulate an app design and make it easier and more user-friendly. Because I think if anybody's going to a site on their phone or even an iPad and parts of it is cut off or it doesn't load properly,
right,
or it makes it hard to click on certain elements, you got to fix those problems, because
Absolutely.
If it's not user-friendly, then people are going to drop off, which is obviously going to make your conversion rate a lot less.
Yeah. Time is money. You cost your users time, you will lose money,
Sweet. So the next topic is what about a user-friendly navigation? I know we kind of maybe touched on that a little bit there, but let's give some of our listeners some ideas about making a user-friendly navigation on their site.
Well, it's actually not. So when you say user-friendly navigation, it's not all about the menu, and that's what we talked about in the previous point as part of responsive web design. But it's also like where does your website encourage users to go? So like every page is also a navigation page. So like if you're on your website and you like the on your homepage, that is going to always be, in 99% of cases, let's say, not always, but most cases, vast majority, is going to be your most visited page on your website. Is going to be your homepage, right? So like say you have a banner at the top that advertises your latest sale. Right below that, like, what you decide to advertise as far as products go, is part of your navigation. So you click, and some websites would actually benefit more for getting people over to like an FAQ page or within a product page, like the FAQ section. And it just depends on where you want to push the user to go. I've even seen like a lot of user engagement on like blogs that are on e-commerce websites leading to sales, because there's some cornerstone content on there that really brings the user a lot of value. Maybe like, say somebody's selling like a baby monitor. You know, if you have a guide that is neutral to like not necessarily super hard selling your own product and just providing value about like baby monitors, and then you link to your own product within it, and you know, because then people will say, oh, these people really know the difference between a good and a bad baby monitor, and they really understand this, and so I'm going to trust that they made the correct decisions on whether it's a good baby monitor. And there is some data that can show that if a user goes through that experience in that way I just described, that they are like, you know, 2 or 3 times more likely to purchase. I'm not saying every website should go out and link to their blog or start a blog. I was just saying, like, make your navigation intentional to what makes sense in your industry and for your users. And not just on the menu, but also where you push people to go with that extremely valuable real estate on the homepage.
Right. I think that's a really good point, because it's not uncommon for whenever I'm searching for a product and I go and maybe I get to the detail page of a product. And it's one thing if you're sitting on a desktop computer, an iMac or just a full screen computer, which is not common anymore. It's more uncommon than it is. You've got a lot of real estate. You could put a lot of detailed information about that product on that page. But when it comes to mobile, whether it be tablet or phone, you really are limited to real estate. So if the purpose of a detail page is to sell a product, then you don't want to have, even if it's way down at the bottom, all the FAQ information about that product. You really are trying to point that person. Every link should be pointing to checkout or add to cart.
Yeah.
And making it intuitive for what that page is.
Yeah.
And as opposed to putting all of the information in one single page for that product, because the second you've got links going all over the place, conversion rate drops again.
Yeah. And last thing in regards to this topic, man, that was a really good summary. I've seen a lot of websites that, like, the average user is only looking for one product. And so if that's the case, if that's like your audience, when you click add to cart, it shouldn't go like, it shouldn't just redirect you to your cart. Why not make the user go to checkout? Like, you know, like I personally prefer the design of, like, when you click add to cart, it automatically redirects you to either the cart page or where you want them to go, rather than have like a drawer that slides out from the side, or just a green message below the cart that says this item has been added to your cart, and then you just let the user decide what they want to do next. I have some good data that shows that conversion rate goes up if you redirect the user after you add to cart. After, like, if you say, if this action is done server side, then redirect the user. And I have tested like going right to checkout after that, and it works well on stores where you wouldn't expect the user to go and add more. But if you do expect the user to go and add more, at least go ahead and redirect them to the cart. That way you give them that opportunity to go ahead and get away. Now, if they're looking for more stuff, they will navigate away. So you're not going to lose. So it's all gain and no loss, because you're not really going to lose a whole lot of people there, because they're still on the product page. They're still on the wrong page. And it's not like they had to click again, you know, to go to the product, because they were already on a different page and they needed to go to add a different product to their cart. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense.
Really long-winded, but
totally makes sense, and we're gonna cover that again here in a few minutes. But let's so I think we did a pretty good job on the user-friendly navigation side of things. Let's jump to the next one. Okay, the next one, I know that you talk about this one a lot, because I always hear you referencing this topic. Fast website load times.
Yes.
This is a big one for you, I know.
Yeah, it makes me livid when sites are slow. Because the thing is like, it makes the internet, which is... Okay, a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this. This is going to be a hot take. In my opinion, the internet is possibly the greatest invention of humanity thus far. And it makes it a worse place when tons of websites load slower than they did in the 90s. Like, we are going in the wrong direction overall, and when it comes to that, because... Hey, if I just code a website that just has like an HTML tag and it's just H1 and it says hello world, and then close H1, it's going to load in like basically as fast as my computer can load it. It's going to be like less than a 0.1 per second. It's going to be ridiculously fast, right? And as you added more, like this is my peeve with WordPress, for example. If your website's on WordPress, a default WordPress installation is too slow for me. Even if you have ultra fast,
one?
If you just install it, if you download the zip and you extract WordPress and you go to the homepage like on the default theme, it is way too slow in my opinion. Way too slow. Yeah, so like we have like a finished expression engine site, which is our main website, and it loads in like 0.5 second or whatever.
Wow.
And that is a fully completed site, and it's faster than most default WordPress installations unless you got some ball in hosting. So it's like, but back to the Shopify end, because I do like to focus on e-com on this podcast, and that is like you got your Shopify and your BigCommerce and all that. A lot of times you load so much JavaScript and so much like image sizes that are unnecessary. If you, a 20, 30 year veteran of design, can look at a 100 kilobyte file and a 400 kilobyte file, and in a blind test not be able to tell the difference with your trained eye, then the user's not going to care. So why not compress that image and make it 4 times faster?
This is really funny because it's occurring to me. You pointed out my history in the design world, and I have been involved in e-com for, at this point, about 2 decades. At one point when I lived on the West Coast, I worked for a software company that developed e-commerce stores. And it's funny, the difference between when I worked back then and now. I was more heavily focused in the design aspect of things because of the nature of my background. And so for category pages, instead of just using HTML text and CSS, I thought it was necessary to create a GIF image for every single category title and to code the site to load that, because for me it was super important for it to look awesome. Now, Granted, back then we didn't have mobile like we do today, but still, internet speeds were a lot slower than they are today, and I didn't. To me, at the time, it was like you had to look good and professional, but obviously, even back then, load times should have been a priority, because the longer a page takes to load, the less chance your person is going to find what they need, and they're just going to move on.
And mobile networks are way less stable and steady too. So that's what you also have to think about. If I'm loading your website and I'm, in the middle of the desert, no, I'm just kidding. But like if I'm like in an area with slow connection and I can shop on your website but not your competitor's website, that's a huge deal to a lot of people. It really is. Yeah. Like, why not make your site as fast as possible? Yeah. People need to really get on the ball with that, in my opinion.
I can't tell you how many times I've been, whether it be traveling or just, even here in Morgantown, just even though we live in a college town that's decent, I live 5 miles out of town, and there are moments when I might be shopping for something, or I just, something comes across my mind. I need to go purchase something, and I'm going to do it right now. And I just completely don't do the purchase because the load time is too slow. And
exactly. And if you're connected to the work Wi-Fi, maybe you would have bought it.
Right.
But people shouldn't focus on their work Wi-Fi. They should focus on disconnect from the Wi-Fi, run a quick speed test. How fast is your internet?
If it loads on LTE, then you're good.
Yes, exactly. That's what you need. That's what you need. You can load our website on LTE. Yeah. I'm calling us out. If our website is slower than that and you load it, comment below, because somebody's head's going to roll.
Bijan. Just kidding, buddy. Bijan's another one of our web developers.
Yeah, he's my buddy.
Anyhow, so folks, focus on website load times. Super important. All right, next topic, next tip. Intuitive checkout process. We briefly touched on that just a little bit ago. How important is it to make intuitive checkout process?
So important. So I have literal almost 1 million users of sample data on this topic. And so I can say with authority and with, with a lot of confidence that yes, a streamlined checkout process is one of the most important aspects of an online business. I mean, come on, like everybody, you hear that, not like nobody's going to disagree with that, but you would be surprised. Like a lot of people hear that and they're like, yeah, I agree. But then they look at their website and they're like, yeah, this ain't it, chief. Like, as far as the checkout process, like doing little things like redirecting the user to the checkout step instead of the cart when appropriate, when it's right for your business, or, making it so commonly purchased items can be easily bundled. So like, let's say you do have two products that are commonly bought together. Rather than expecting the user to go do all the work, why don't you do the work for them? When they click add to cart on the first item and it redirects them to their cart, just offer them the second item right there on their cart, and you can click like add to order, and then it either reloads the page or uses Ajax to update the cart if you're a fancy pants or whatever, and then you can click checkout and you're good to go. Like anticipate what the user wants and save them work on the checkout process. Please save them work. Make an account system that makes sense, like if a user creates an account and saves their details in your store, give them like a welcome discount or something. Get and advertise that beforehand. Incentivize users to remove friction for themselves. If somebody has an account on your store, it's so much harder to convince them to make that first purchase anyways. So you get over two hurdles. You make it so, one, you incentivize them to create an account and therefore make their own shopping experience less friction, and two, you incentivize them to make their first purchase with that 20% deal. So you get, or whatever, like a percentage off welcome purchase deal. And even if you're the type of business where people buy once and then they never come back, just make your product a little bit more expensive to offset the deal. I have seen that work across the board. Just incentivizing people to save their credit card or their bank details within their account.
Sweet. Yeah, I mean, it seems like a common sense thing, but when there's so many other aspects to work on within your site, I think that sometimes this one falls through the cracks where people just don't take the extra time and effort to, make that process simple. It's just like, if it's difficult, here's a pet peeve of mine. Walmart. I hate Walmart. So
who doesn't hate Walmart? To be honest,
Walmart has in our town. Walmart has more self checkouts than they do actual humans checking you out, and they make it more difficult to get out of the store, in my opinion. And I personally don't like self checkout when you have beyond like 6 to 10 items.
Yeah, for me, I only go through self checkout if I have less than 15 items.
So because they have 12 self-checkouts, they only have 2 humans in a checkout, and it's more difficult for the people that are doing their grocery shopping for the week to get out of the store than it is to not. I don't want to go through. Man, I'm paying for all $200 worth of groceries for a couple of weeks. I don't want to take them out of. I don't want to bag them all. They're making the process more difficult.
Yeah,
it's the same concept.
That's why I'm starting to use those pickup services.
Yeah, I tend to not spend the time to do that, but it
does take time for sure.
It's
once because we
have used it quite a fair amount, but I'm just a little bit lazy on that regards. But anyhow, same concept in real life. Make it easy for people to spend money. So if it's easier to check out, if you can just take the energy to optimize that part of the process, then do so people can get out of your store and pay you for what they're trying to do. Not that you want them to leave. That sounded kind of funny. Get out of my store.
Yeah. Slightly off topic, but how when you buy multiple things in the self-checkout and you go to scan it and it makes you put it in the wait area so you don't have the advantage that the cashier does. Because, say you bought 10 of one thing, right? They might say it's a 12-pack of Sody Pop or something. Not that you're going to be buying 10 of those, but let's pretend like you are because you're a degenerate like me. So they can just scan one 12-pack like beep, 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 like 10 times, but they don't let you do that because they're afraid
Right.
you're going to steal it.
All right, next one. Okay, this kind of some of these are kind of linked, but I mean, we can just go deeper into detail. So when we're talking about the fast load times on pages, part of that would be optimized images and videos. Tell me a little bit about what people should do to focus on optimized images.
Yeah, so I on the optimization of speed optimization section rather, I did talk about file size, so I won't brush over that again. But what I will talk about is optimizing the actual pixel size of your images, because not a lot of people really pay attention to how that impacts their viewport. And that is, like, if you have, say, a banner at the top of your website, like a slider or a one image banner at the top, which 90% of e-commerce stores do. If you make it taller, like too tall, then the viewport is basically gonna all like your screen when you load on mobile is gonna have can be completely consumed by that thing. So pay attention to the height of the images, but also the videos too. Like you can do creative things like have square video if you would like, which studies show are more engaging on mobile, at least on social media ads and social media sites. I honestly haven't split tested wide versus square video on websites. I think that'd be an interesting data point to bring sometime in the future. Do some testing myself, but yeah, just pay attention to what aspect ratio. Google that if you don't know what it is. It just is, how 1080p is 1920 by 1080. The aspect ratio just means that it's the same proportion vertically and horizontally to where it's the same shape as you scale the resolution up. So, 16 by 9 is the standard for online video, which is, 1080p, but then you can go all the way up to 4K or 8K if you're being crazy. And that's just one aspect ratio. I'm not suggesting that, but just pay attention to what aspect ratio you use for images and video on your site to best optimize how, when you thumb scroll through it, how the content is sprinkled out to you. And if you want some really good inspiration on how to do that right, go to Apple's website stuff. Their web design for informational is really good. Now, as far as checking out, there's a lot of steps, but I don't propose to know more than Apple or whatever, but they can make it more friction because people want the product so bad. But there's a lot of extra friction there that, anyways.
Yeah, me when it comes to Apple products, Mike, right? It's
I love Apple products too.
Yeah.
I don't love the Apple desktops. I prefer my own hand-built PCs, but mobile, if I was gonna go buy myself a laptop and I didn't want to play video games and waste my time on it, and I was actually buying it for work, yeah, dude, Mac stuff, Mac tablets, Apple tablets, Apple phones, and yeah, they're the best.
So optimize your images and your videos. Make make the content that fall into those two categories, as high quality as possible, without starting to fall apart, but fast loading, because again, load speed, man. If you got slow load times, you're gonna lose people.
That's the number one if you're listening to this podcast, if you do one thing that I'm saying here, it's the load speed, man.
Right.
It's the load speed all the way.
Sweet. All right, and number 6, because we said we were going to give it an extra one, we didn't want to just do 5.
That's right.
All right, number 6, reduce heavy content. Let's focus on that. How can we reduce heavy content? High quality content's obviously important for SEO and staying consistent, but in brand messaging. But it's also necessary to encourage users to learn more about your products and businesses. How can we reduce the amount of content that's on a page to optimize the page for CRO? Does that make sense, Mike?
Well, so for me, it's more about the bloat on JavaScript. When I think content, I'm thinking JavaScript, but I don't think that the listener is really going to be into that. So
most people aren't. Most people aren't going to be super tech savvy like you.
So
are.
I'm going to focus on content,
right?
And you're going to get different recommendations for different people as to like how long your product pages should be and how focused they are. For me, like when I've split tested things, most of the time adding more value to the page is better. So like I prefer myself product pages that are very descriptive but very brief, like very efficient with my time. But the data shows that that product pages that have more bloat and more information on them do outperform pages that don't. You know, if I split test original, variant, and the variant is adding a new section instead of taking away a section, the new section, no matter what it is, no matter how much value I think it brings, almost always wins, like 9 out of 10 times. So, yeah, I mean, as far as bloat goes, I don't really think reducing bloat is as important as the rest of the topics, but it is basically when we were talking about that point, I really wanted it to more focus on code. But as we went through the episode, I was like, that part of it, like maybe hire somebody like me to, like once you've done all the other steps that you can do, like compressing your images, like I think having a developer go over your site one time, especially if you're in a range where you're making at least 10 grand a month on the site, paying that one time, like maybe $500. Because honestly, like if somebody just wanted like page speed optimization, it wouldn't cost that much. And so, yeah, anyways, so just having a developer do that, like in your JavaScript, in your PHP, and, just clean everything up is valuable. It really is valuable.
Right.
But,
well, let's talk a little bit, just so I can throw some of my 2 cents in there and my background. Obviously, I come from 3 decades of creative experience, and originally was through design. So like readability is huge for me, because that's the way
font pairings.
That's what I was taught in design school. Like you need to make sure that your content is readable. And I'm going way back to like when I designed for print publications. So, I think it's super valuable and important to have a lot of content in there as far as like copy content and text goes. But if you're so heavy on the text side and massive blocks of text, is it really necessary to have all of that in there? Can you streamline that a little bit? Can you make your headings and subheadings a little bit more bold and standoutish without being gaudy, so it's readable? Is there weird spacing going on between the lines that are extending the length of the page? Is there too much white space? Like, personally, I think if you take the time to fix these issues, it makes a huge difference in trimming down the amount of content that is actually on that page, but also, again, increasing load times. The less content in there, if you trim it down to the bare minimums, the better. And then if you need more detailed information, you can point them over to maybe a FAQ section or more detailed copy related, where you're not really trying to check them out through the cart. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I have a follow-up question for you.
Oh boy.
What is your and this is going to be so hard to pick a superlative, but what is your favorite like font combo for header and body text, if you have one? I can say mine.
All right. Well, so I'm gonna be honest with you. So I'm gonna give you my default now, but unfortunately,
if you say Helvetica, then I'm done.
No. So here's the funny thing, Mike, is that although I have a ton of experience in web design and development, and to be honest with you, you've exceeded me, in recent years and stuff, and I understand all that stuff. The things that I design mostly for are not in HTML anymore. So like I'm designing images, and I'm designing
You're dodging the question.
I know. Well, okay. Myriad.
This is a politician answer right now.
Myriad Pro is what I select.
It's like I wanted 2 fonts. Give me the 2.
Myriad Pro. Any combination of Myriad Pro.
So basically Helvetica.
Well, yeah. I'm a simple guy, Mike. I'm simple. I don't like to get gaudy. I like to keep it simple and
Myriad
clean.
Pro. What combo with it?
All right. If I'm designing an image or a piece that needs like a heading or subhead, and I need to condense the amount of text, then I'm going to use Myriad Pro Bold Condensed. Okay. But for the subhead or the header. But if I'm using for the copy, a block of copy, then it's probably going to most likely just be Myriad Pro regular or condensed, depending on how much information I'm trying to get into the space.
Okay, I'm gonna tell the user my preference.
But that's coming from a design, like a visual design guy. Like I haven't been designing for web pages like you have in recent years.
Yeah. So aside from the Montserrat that like Impakt uses, which I don't want to like recommend that every user go out and use ours, so I'm gonna like recommend a different combo. I really like when I'm designing something, just for a new client. My default is an Oswald header, so the header font to be Oswald, and then the copy to be like Open Sans or just some sort of sans serif font. Just Open Sans, most people have that installed on their computer. So yeah, or Fira Sans or like whatever, you can get it on for free on Google Fonts, I believe. But yeah, that combo has been my go-to, my tried and true for like a long time. So
awesome. Sweet. All right. So there you have it, guys. In today's episode, we gave you our top 5 plus 1 bonus, making 6 pro tips on how to optimize your web pages to hopefully help increase your conversions.
Heck yeah.
All right. All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys, for listening. We appreciate your time and energy. And if you have an opportunity, we would just love it if you would comment on this actual episode. Give us some input on how we can improve it, or some of the things that you love already, and where we can take it from here. Mike and I are super excited and to be working on this project now. We've got lots of other episodes in the works and topics that we need to discuss. Honestly, I see us cranking this stuff out pretty consistent here in the next several weeks. So thanks a lot, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
Bye.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the second episode of the E-commerce Business Growth Podcast. We appreciate you. If you would like to find out more information about what our agency does, you can go to thinkimpakt.com. That's thinkimpakt.com. Thinkimpakt.com. And we'd also appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe us on our social media channels to help us with the algorithms. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.